Welcome to the Carolina Weather Group for this Wednesday, June 11th, 2025. We're so excited. One of our favorite guests is back. Tony Rice, NASA ambassador, is here to talk all things space. Buckle up, roll the open, let's get started. I'm James Brierton in Charlotte, North Carolina, and you're watching the Carolina Weather Group streaming live on Facebook and YouTube on this June 11th, 2025 on our Carolina Weather Group panel. Wow, guys, the OGs are here. We've got Jared Smith in Charleston, South Carolina. We got Frank Stray in Columbia, South Carolina, and Scotty Powell in Myrtle Beach. Good thing Tony Rice is in Raleigh, North Carolina. Otherwise, Tony, we'd really be outnumbered.
We got to balance.
We got to balance it out. So Tony is back. And it's good to have you back, Tony. We're going to talk space weather, solar flares, flirting with the Aurora. We thought we maybe were going to have private space launch to the International Space Station today, but it got postponed again. And I'll also let our viewers know that coming up later this hour, we will also be looking back at the life and legacy of Gary England, longtime News 9 Oklahoma City chief meteorologist who passed away this week, and we had the pleasure of talking with him a few years back right here on the podcast. He shared some of his amazing stories with us. We were so privileged, and we'll have some of those clips coming up later this hour. But Tony, it's been a pretty active space weather month. We thought we were going to have the Northern Lights a week and change ago, but it was not to be this time.
It was not, and it had the makings of it actually happening. But that's the interesting thing about space weather, and we should talk about that, some of the challenges of forecasting space weather. So I was just out at the Space Weather Prediction Center in Boulder, Colorado, talking with some of the forecasters out there. Spent the morning, and we talked a lot about, again, the challenges of forecasting, why it's so hard. But I point blank asked them what they wanted meteorologists in particular to know about those challenges and how they would like to see just Aurora forecasting, or the possibility of Aurora. Like to see it handled a little bit differently in the media. So should we talk about that a little bit as well? But the reason it's been a very active month, and the reason it's been a very active couple of months, thinking back, going back to this time last year, even back to May of last year, where we had some incredible Aurora opportunities on down into the deep south. The reason it's been so active is because we're at solar maximum right now.
What does that mean, solar maximum, Tony?
Yeah, so the sun has about an 11-year cycle, and I say about because everything about space weather is about. There is very little that is completely predictable, and we learn more and more every day. The sun's the thing in the solar system we know the least about. We know more about Venus, we know more about Mars, we know about the sun, which is kind of crazy. But that is fast getting fixed as we launch more and more missions that are taking a look at the sun. But the sun has this 11-year cycle, and activity ebbs and flows. And it can simply be measured by counting the sunspots. So we're at the peak of that activity. It was actually the actual solar maximum, the point where there are the maximum number of sunspots. There are the maximum number of events that are occurring. That happened in end of 2024. But that's that's a great shot right there. That solar cycle chart there down at the bottom, and you can see at the top there, that's the larger zoomed out version of it. You can see those cycles happening over and over again. We measure it with the sunspot count, and right now we're cresting that hill of the roller coaster, if you will, but we're still pretty high up there.
How do we get this data, Tony?
So this is the sunspot data actually goes back a lot farther than a lot of other meteorological data. This has been observed for hundreds and hundreds of years. So we have a good amount of data going back, several hundred years. And it's simply somebody getting out there every day and counting the number of sunspots that they see there. And that's a good indication of the kind of activity that's going to come. And as we learn more about heliophysics and what the impacts of these things might be, allows us to actually forecast these things coming our way.
What type of remote sensing? We talk about remote sensing a lot when it comes to weather, but how do we detect things as far away as the sun?
Yeah, let's talk about what kind of tools and what kind of data is available to us. Um, the NOAA Corps um, officer, the NOAA Corps is actually has an officer corps and is treated very much like the U.S. military, but they report up through NOAA. The NOAA Corps officer I was working with out there at the SWPC gave a really good comparison that will be near and dear to all your hearts, especially as you think back to the forecasting of hurricanes, for example.
Hmm.
So the the challenge that they're up against in space weather is they basically have a GOES satellite. They have a remote sensing. They have a way to look at remotely, say, a hurricane forming off the African coast. And then they get nothing after that for several days. And the next hands-on data they have is actually in situ. It is actually measuring the solar wind. It's measuring the plasma that's coming out from these coronal mass ejections from these other solar events, measuring the polarity, the speed, the density. Really good data that actually tell us what's going on there. And you can equate that to a buoy, say 100 miles off the North Carolina coast. Those are the two
Gotcha.
pieces of data that you have to work with. Remote sensing, you've got visualization of, and as you see here in the different visualizations that are popping up, we're looking at different wavelengths of light. There's a lot of data that's available there, but still, these are just images. We don't get actual in situ data until it passes that buoy, and that buoy is basically two spacecraft. One is called Discover, and that is a joint NASA NOAA mission that is completely devoted to space weather. That's sitting at the L1 point. That's sitting at the Lagrange point that's about 1 million miles from Earth. From the time that a coronal mass ejection passes that point and reaches Earth, we've got about 30 minutes ballpark.
Wow.
So that is why we're always encouraged to, when there's a possibility, a threat, if you will, of aurora occurring that night, the advice is always, go on the Space Weather Prediction Center's website
Yeah.
and look at that 30-minute forecast. That's why it's a 30-minute forecast. That is absolutely the best we can do right now. There's another spacecraft out there called ACE that's positioned a little bit off axis, and it does some of its own. Thank you. There's the Lagrange points. There's another really cool mission out at L2, which is 1 million miles in the opposite direction. Anybody know the name of that mission? I'll give you a hint. It's named for a famous North Carolinian.
Um,
It's the
not.
James Webb Space Telescope.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
that. You
Yeah.
know what? I'm going to be embarrassed to say I did not know that he was a North Carolinian. I feel like I would have said Webb, but then I was like filtering by North Carolina in my head, and I failed.
Yeah, he's from North Carolina, went to the University of North Carolina, was honored with the naming of that telescope for what he contributed to NASA during the early 50s. I'm sorry, the early 60s, when we were all gung-ho about sending somebody to the moon. He made sure that NASA, he was administrator of NASA at the time, he made sure that part of NASA's budget went to science, to
I
pure
think
science.
I think everyone here tonight is still gung ho about getting people on.
I think so. I hope so.
Yeah.
But back to the space weather. So ACE is sitting up there about between L1 and L4. It's in a heliocentric orbit. Those Lagrange points are really great places to put spacecraft because they're points of gravitational balance.
Hmm.
You can keep a spacecraft there without spending a lot of fuel, and fuel equals longevity when it comes to these missions. So that's why that's sitting out there. But it's got magnetometers on it. It's got all sorts of instruments that measure this solar wind and tell us really important things like the polarity of it.
You mentioned tracking hurricanes as a comparison. The image that's also coming to mind to me is like the tsunami early warning system. You mentioned buoys.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
A very good comparison, and that also has its challenges of not. It's an early warning just based on initial information that we get,
Mm.
and then we really don't know how that warning is going to play out until just before it hits.
Well, I think later on in the show, when we play some of our Gary England clips and he's talking about some of the early years of radar and some of the limitations with that, it feels also similar to what I was rehearing him tell today in that podcast, where they're working with limited data sets. Tony, let me ask you. So we earlier this month, we were all kind of put on a watch, if you will, if I play out this analogy, that we might get some aurora, some northern lights, because we saw one of these, I'm going to say, blips happen, but then it didn't really pan out, or it didn't time out the way we thought it was going to. Is that because, well, why was that, I guess?
Yeah, so two things happened there. So what we saw was a coronal mass ejection. The sun basically burped. It belched. And when it belched, it spits out just absolutely millions and billions of pounds of plasma. Or not pounds, tons of plasma. And that plasma is charged particles that have a charge to them. They're not all positive, all negative. There's a mixture. It's a very chaotic system out there. But the charge is very important. I'll get to that in a moment. So
Okay.
we knew that that was an important coronal mass ejection, and they happen all the time. What you're seeing there are filaments that are erupting from the sun, and the lines there are literally magnetic field lines. And when that gets charged enough, when that gets chaotic enough, at the center of that is probably a sunspot too. That's why the sunspots are counting them is so important here. That's where all the magic happens, is around those sunspots. When that system there gets chaotic, energetic enough, when those field lines are twisting around each other, they can break. When that happens, a coronal mass ejection can occur. Okay, this is all happening in 3 dimensions. It's really easy to forget that when we're looking at these images and we see this disk of the sun. We go outside, hopefully we put our eclipse glasses on. Those still work when you're just looking at the sun. So there he's got his. I got a stack of them over here still from.
Oh, I'm glad it's not
April
just
of
me who
last
has
year.
this stuff on their desk. Okay.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I take them out from time to time when we got. And this is a great time to do it. Go outside, use your eclipse glasses, and some of these spots are large enough you can see them with the naked eye. They get that big. But when that coronal mass ejection occurs, and we can see it with an instrument called the LASCO instrument. It's on the Solar Dynamics Observatory. That's the GOES, if you will, of space. GOES actually also has some solar instruments on it that's facing back, but GOES is in geocentric orbit, quite a bit closer. So we get really good information out of SDO. That LASCO instrument has a artificial eclipse in the middle of it. It's covering up the bright part of the sun, so we can see the corona.
Oh.
That's what we're looking at there. Now, when a coronal mass ejection occurs, it's like a smoke ring being blown out. If, again, happening in 3 dimensions, if that smoke ring is heading off in this direction, it's going to look like an oval. If it's heading straight for us, it looks like a circle. Picture somebody blowing a smoke ring at you. If they're blowing it directly at you, you're going to see it expand out in a circle around the center of that disk. That's what happened last week. We saw that circle, we call it a halo, and we knew that it was an Earth-directed coronal mass ejection. That's why the watch was issued. The energy that was seen leaving the sun at that point gave some indication that it might create a geomagnetic storm that was sufficient enough to push those auroral the show basically in the upper atmosphere down. The forecasters were even bold enough to say possibly into Alabama.
Here, as you were talking, I was thinking of imagery such as this that Brad Panovich captured during a solar eclipse. This one, I think, is the 2015 one, but how you can see that corona around the eclipse.
That's the corona, and you're seeing some of those prominences, those loops there. That's where all of this activity comes. So our halo occurs, our CME occurs. We don't know how fast that's coming. We have some idea based on what we saw it looked like when it was leaving, and of course many years of experience watching these things, but we don't know 100% when it's actually going to arrive. That one arrived about, we'll say, around 12 hours early.
Wow.
When it arrives, makes a big difference on who gets the show.
Right.
It looked like it was going to arrive which side of the Earth exactly, because we have this nasty business about rotating as well as the sun has this nasty business of rotating.
Darn nighttime.
I mean, that's the
or
fun
daytime in this case, right? Because daytime is what screwed us.
It hit it hit early morning, which is not advantageous to North America. So
Yeah.
that's one reason it didn't work out very well. That being said, it still energizes the upper atmosphere. There can be a couple hours worth of possibility of creating auroras. The big factor that did not push it down into the lower latitudes was the polarity. So all these particles have a positive and negative charge. It was trending mostly positive. Negative particles tend to what they call highly connect with the magnetosphere. When think back to your middle school experiment with magnets. Positive, negative sides of the magnet. Do two positives, do they attract? No, they repel, and that's what happened. So those particles were basically sloughed off. The magnetosphere did its job, pushed all those particles away. Had they been more negative and connected more, they would have been funneled down. Think of the magnetosphere like a giant. This is the Carolina Weather Group, so let's say Krispy Kreme donut. It funnels down into the middle of that hot glazed now donut. When it's more negatively charged and higher energy, that's when we get the really big shows down here in the Carolinas. Without that, we're a little bit disappointed in our friends up in Minnesota and Canada and such. They get the show, but
As
they
long
get
as
the
it's
show
not
all the time.
smoky.
Yeah. Thanks, Tony. Now I craved a chocolate ice glazed.
Chocolate, huh? Okay. Yeah. I'm going to get to Scotty in a second, who has a question, but you said something about charging up the atmosphere, and I've been saving this for, I think, this moment. So these are the television antenna channels that my receiver claims to have recently picked up. And I'm just going to wait a second to see if anybody can figure out what's wrong with this list of channels for a guy who lives in Charlotte, North Carolina.
Atlanta, WSV.
Yeah. So, Tony, now I can't receive them right now. Like at some point, it received enough of a signal that it put them on the channel guide, but not enough that I can tune it in. But do you think this had anything to do with charging up the atmosphere a weekend ago?
Not an RF guy. I love talking to the RF guys. I was out at a summer ago at NASA's facility out in the middle of the California desert looking at their giant antennas that are talking to all these cool missions out beyond the orbit of the moon. RF guys fascinate me. If I had to guess if this was Final Jeopardy and it was thrown up in front of me, I'm guessing you were bouncing signals off the ionosphere.
Okay. I've seen it with AM radio. Go ahead, Frank.
I know just enough about RF to say something stupid, so I hope I don't sound too stupid when I say
I just did it on your behalf.
Yeah, that is exactly the kind of thing that happens during geomagnetic storms, is that radio frequencies that don't normally skip off the ionosphere start skipping off the ionosphere or another layer of the atmosphere. And that happens with FM's frequencies and TV signal frequencies too. So I actually have experienced that before just driving down the road. I was on the way home when I lived in Pennsylvania, was on the way home to Pennsylvania. I picked up a station in Portland, Maine on the FM dial. When I
used to do that as a kid.
I remember listening. Yep, I remember listening to the World Series on ESPN Radio Chicago, driving down I-26 from Greenwood.
But Chicago has a clear channel. Is it that one or no?
Yeah, right.
Maybe
a few actually.
Do you guys want me to get my spectrum chart off the wall?
But the station I'm talking
make
about
me reference.
Station, it was 105 something in Portland, Maine, and you don't get FM more than on the best day 100 miles away.
Yeah, I was disappointed that I couldn't pull in these stations, like actually view them.
800 miles.
Yeah. But that does happen during solar events, and is actually what is causing more Starlink satellites to drop out of the sky. Because during those solar events, physically, it's causing them to deorbit a little bit sooner than was expected. There's a website, and I have to pull it up and share with you guys later, but there's a website that predicts deorbiting satellites based on their orbital data and changes in just basically their altitude. And there's a lot of Starlink satellites on there. It's not necessarily because of their quality or construction or their orbit, though they are orbiting quite a bit lower than a good number of the other satellites. It's quantity. It's absolutely quantity. But those things are dropping out of orbit fairly frequently right now because of all the solar activity. It makes the upper atmosphere more dense, which creates more drag. When you have drag, that slows the spacecraft down. And if you're not going faster than escape speed, your gravity takes over and does its job.
Yeah, my understanding of the physics there is that all that solar activity and all the radiation coming from the sun warms the upper atmosphere, so it literally makes the atmosphere expand outward more. And so
Yep.
you have, I won't say more pressure, I'll say more particles per cubic meter.
Yeah, space isn't
space.
empty.
And you
No,
get more
no
drag.
part of space is empty. And then with all that solar activity, to your point, when the exosphere expands out, it becomes less empty.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it.
This is why so many space nerds watch a weather show. Scotty, you've been patiently waiting with a question, my
Yeah.
friend. Go ahead.
It's all good. As the broadcast met here, Tony, you said you were able to speak with the folks out at the Space Weather Prediction Center, and they had some advice for us in the broadcast meteorology world. So, can you share that with us so I know what I can do to help better forecast or better at least communicate what's going to happen the next time?
Yes, absolutely. And you know me, I love and go and visit my net friends and go and darkening their doorsteps. And I try to bring NASA swag. Now I got a little bit of NOAA swag that they sent me home with. Everybody should have one of these hanging in their cubicles. The space weather scale. They're operating with the same kind of a watch and warning scale, but for different physics. That's their advice. They want broadcast mets, they want journalists in general to learn more about what space weather is and treat it as they would terrestrial weather in terms of watches and warnings and such. And one of the big challenges that's happened over the past couple of years, especially during this period of solar maximum, is we get this watch that comes out. We get the heads up, hey, something might be coming, and we have this bad habit of that being it. That's reported on, the possibility of Aurora happening, and then nothing. Nothing in terms of, no more updates, no more checking of the data, no more sharing it with our audiences. Here's how this is progressing. Again, it's really, really challenging because of that Africa and then the buoy challenge, where there's this big gap of time where we got nothing to talk about. And then 30 minutes before is when we actually know something. But that 30 minutes before that's the ask, is know where to go find more information about these events, be aware of that 30-minute warning. And, heck, if the data looks right and there's what we thought might happen actually might happen, break in. You're the broadcast Met. Can you break in? Can you interrupt the NBA Finals? Can you interrupt American
Definitely.
Idol and get away with it? You've done it before. Why not do it for something cool like Aurora if the data is pointing to it? So the Space Weather Prediction Center has a great website, swpc.noaa.gov. There are 2 dashboards on there that are really good to take a look at. The dashboards are linked up at the top. One is the Aurora dashboard. That's got that 30-minute forecast. It is updated every 30 minutes. There is somebody on staff in Boulder 24/7. They're there to push this kind of information out, not just for the pretty Aurora, but for all the other impacts that space weather might have. We talked about some of the space assets out there affecting satellites, can affect the astronauts on orbit. Go ahead and scroll up. Yeah, hit the dashboards link there, and then hit the Aurora one. You can see there's also dashboards for emergency management. And scroll down a little bit, and you'll get to there's those 30-minute forecasts. There's one for tonight. There's one for tomorrow night. Those are updated all the time. So let's talk a little bit about how to read these. This is a little more active. The colored bands, they call it the auroral oval. Those are talking about probability. Near and dear to meteorologists' hearts is talking about probability and trying to get that across to your audience. Big challenge. So here's a way to continue that conversation. People under that blob, green being less probable, red being more probable, they're going to possibly see something overhead. Now you see that red line that is down below the blob? That's the extent of viewing on the horizon. So if you are on that red line or north, you can still see some auroral activity, possibly by looking on your northern horizon. That's the way to read these.
I'm going to put a link to this in our live comments and in the description of our show so that people watching or listening can also go and check out the NOAA Space Weather webpage here, Tony. I appreciate you explaining how to find these and how to understand it, because I do feel like that's part of what we try to do on this show is not just hoard all the information, but try to educate on how to find it yourself.
Let me show you one other piece of data here that clicks back to what we were talking about with polarity. So scroll back up and go to the Space Weather Enthusiast dashboard.
Okay. I like the title of that.
And scroll down, geomagnetic activity. That will look familiar to you. So, we're in a or upcoming into a geomagnetic storm right now. One of the lowest levels. It looks like it's at a G. Was it G1?
Yeah. See if I can fix this sizing.
Yeah, it's all good.
Yeah.
And then scroll down a little bit more, and you're going to see a lot of spark lines. There you go. All right, it's a bit of an eye chart. But that very top BZ line there, that's the one to pay attention to. That is showing the polarity of the solar wind. When that starts going below that dashed line, that's showing as negative. And that's when you can start get excited about possibility of seeing some aurora. And the last thing I'll show you here, click out of that and then scroll up a little bit. Discussion forecast and forecast in general. Yeah, y'all know how to read these.
Yeah.
This is all in Zulu time. And you can see these are every 3 hours. This is the forecasted geomagnetic, or actually the KP, the planetary index. So we can see we got a G1 storm that's forecasted for the next couple of hours. We got another G2, if my eyes are not failing me too much, predicted in a couple of days. These are the predictions for geomagnetic storms. Those numbers have got to get up north of 7, and what we saw back in May was around a 9.
A
So
G9.
Yes, a KP of 9.
A KP of 9. Okay.
KP of 9 would have been a G. Let me get my chart out here.
Well,
make sure I keep myself
I was going to
honest.
actually ask you, because I can see on this chart, the left side says KP9, and then on the right side says G5. Do they always line
There
up?
you go. So it's a G5. Yeah, it's going to line up like that.
What are those? What is a KP versus a G?
So a KP is the magnetic potential of the Earth. So it's it's basically a measurement of how energized the upper atmosphere is going to be. And that is going to directly correlate to the geomagnetic storm. A G1 is minor, a G5 is considered extreme. So we saw a G5 back in May of last year.
Yeah.
So there you have absolutely everything you need to know to read these things properly. So, make sure it's on you got a bookmark and you check it from time to time. And the next geomagnetic storm watch we have that's coming on, those of you broadcast Mets, please go talk to the folks in the newsroom that are writing those flowery, go outside and see the Northern Lights, which I've learned to accept that phrasing. If it gets people outside and looking up, I'm fine with it. But make sure they know that that's step 1. Step 2 is following up and seeing if it's actually going to occur, and explaining to people why or why not.
Yes, a little fact checking.
Little fact checking goes a long way.
Cool. Yeah, certainly. Tony, before we let you go, we mentioned at the start of the show we were intending, maybe going to see a launch to the International Space Station Axiom Mission 4. We have some video on the screen here in a moment of Axiom Mission 1's launch from 2022. How does this differ from, say, NASA SpaceX Crew missions? And what do you think the big picture impact of these, I guess I call them private astronauts?
Yeah, that's a great question. The main difference is private versus public. And yes, those Dragon crews are flying on a private spacecraft, but they are very much NASA and other professional astronauts that are there to go spend 6 months on the International Space Station. So that's the biggest difference, is the passengers and how long they're going to be spending up there, and other other space tourism efforts spend even less time there. Some of them are measured in minutes. Those ballistic flights. It's literally just a very expensive roller coaster. Is kind of what it comes down to.
By
And I'm
ballistic
speaking
flights,
scientifically.
you mean the Katy Perry flights?
The Katy Perry flights, the up and down flights.
Yes.
There is little to no science going on there. What's interesting about Axiom, and they've done this since the first flights, is they're actually doing some science while they're up there.
Okay.
And I pulled up the manifest for Axiom 4, and as I look through the items that are on there, I see a couple of things that are definitely going to further their business, which is fine. This is what they do for business. But absolutely everything that I'm seeing on this list is very focused on how humans react to space flight. I see examining microgravity's impact on the brain and cognitive risk. I suspect some of their space tourists are going to be older. Those are the folks who have the wherewithal to pay for these things. So again, this is just me reading it and making some guesses about what's going on here. Same with how to support insulin-dependent diabetes on short-duration missions to microgravity. That could benefit a lot of different kind of astronauts, but I could see that benefiting older astronauts, professional or otherwise, pretty well. And then the rest of them are just really about how humans react to space flight. Study the effects of space flight on joints and blood flow. Assessing astronaut readiness. They're actually hooking up to some iPhone software, so they're trying some commercial off-the-shelf stuff to do that. Investing in cancer growth in space, we can all benefit from that. Focusing on triple-negative breast cancer, exciting that they're going to do some of that kind of research up there. And it goes on and on. There's something about stem cells in blood, how they react to space flight. So that's what, as I look through some of these different missions, that's what I find exciting about Axiom, is that yes, this is space tourism. Yes, they're going to the ISS. Yes, it's relatively short duration when you compare it to what the professional, the NASA and ESA astronauts are going up there and spending at least 6 months, sometimes a lot longer. Sometimes they'll stay through a couple of missions. This sets itself apart by they're actually doing some science up there while
That's
they're
cool.
doing it.
Yeah. Jared, you have a question for Tony about space flight?
No question necessarily, but I was
We'll
also
come up with one, Jared.
Who is your daddy and what does he do? No, I was I was looking at some additional sites that use Navy transmitters.
Mhm.
Skyandsolar.com, for example, they use Navy transmitters that they use to talk to submarines. They use the output from those to detect what's going on in the ionosphere, what's going on with solar flares, and they use that to plot Aurora as well, which is kind of cool.
Neat.
Yeah. So got that up here. I mean, it's pretty cool. Pretty cool. You can also tell when Iceland is erupting by these as well when it goes out. My girlfriend used to work on these, so would send me this a lot. So it's pretty cool. It's I don't know if you've seen this before, but
probably one of those extremely low frequency transmitters that are literally talk to submarines through the Earth's mantle.
Pretty, I guess so. I don't know.
Wow.
If I think there's a black helicopter over my house now, so guys, I might have to.
That's Jared Smith in Charleston. Thanks for joining us, Jared. Have a good night.
Yeah. No, pretty cool.
Yeah. I'll turn Frank and Scotty back on here if you guys have any other questions or comments for Tony.
I have one question that probably no one here could answer, but I'm going to ask anyway. Does any of this space weather stuff that happens above our atmosphere affect things that happen in the atmosphere? Does space weather have any impact on the weather we sometimes do or don't experience at the surface?
Now, I regret not asking that question when I was out in Boulder. That's a really good question. I don't have a good answer to.
That's a tease to subscribe, so the next time Tony comes back, you get the answer to that question. Yeah. Well, Tony, anything else on your mind or up in your sky that you want to make sure our audience knows about?
Boy, not off the top of my head. Keep an eye on the SWPC site. Whenever I go in and talk to my friends at WRAL or other stations, the anchors always ask me when the next Aurora is going to occur. And of course, I can't tell you that. It's akin to asking when it's going to snow next time. Those
Hey,
are both about as,
wait. We know we control all that. So come on now, Tony.
and it all stops at I-95. Yeah,
That's right.
Yeah.
I-95, I-85. You know.
there you go. Yeah, the wall is real. But I can say that we are still in the period of solar maximum. So the chances, while waning, as the number of sunspots go down and the activity goes down with it, while waning, we're still at a point of very high activity. So I will not be very surprised at all if we have another May-like event, May of last year, and we will certainly see some more events like we saw over the last couple of weeks, where there is a Earth-directed coronal mass ejection that gives somebody a show. It's a matter of, are we going to be facing in the right direction when it arrives, and will it be charged enough and in the right direction that the energy will actually push its way down into the Krispy Kreme donut where we can see it.
Thank you for bringing that full circle. I'll read this one comment from somebody whose username involves SPC. They're watching on YouTube with us tonight. Last time I saw the Auroras was last year, and I'm never going to Alaska ever again because it was very cold, like negative 10 degrees cold. I've always wanted to go to Alaska, Tony, to experience like days of continuous sunlight.
That sounds exhausting. I'd like to go to experience, really good Aurora up there. And
yeah, it's true.
They're probably bored of it at this point. They get to see so much of it.
Well, if you want to tell the sun, I'll take a free atmospheric show anytime it wants. Yeah.
This time I won't sleep through it because the last one I was like, it's not going to happen. And then it happened. So.
You missed out, man. You missed out.
It was pretty.
It was nice. All right. Well, Tony, we appreciate your time and all of your insights as always. And off the air and on the air, we appreciate all your information helping the broadcast Mets and everyone who wants to learn about science. You are a treasure trove of information. We're so lucky to have you here in the Carolinas.
I appreciate you listening to my spacey rants.
Anytime. You bring those spacey rants here anytime you want. You're welcome to stick around. We're going to play a game called Too Many Tabs, which is, like the name implies, all of the things we want to get in the show and have them open in a plethora of tabs. Jared? Oh, wait, hang on. Tony, do you have a social media you want to plug for the public to follow you?
Sure. I'm RTP Hokey. I'm far less active on Twitter, but I'm also on Instagram, and I try to push some things out there from time to time. My Beagle has an Instagram.
Okay.
It's, Howard Dogowitz.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, so Howie has his own Instagram. But RTP Hokey is a great place to see that. And I also frequently contribute to WRAL.com on lots of spacey things. So you can check me out there as well.
You certainly do. All right. Thank you, Tony. Like I said, you're welcome to stick around, or if you got to run, we understand too.
I got to see these tabs.
You got to see these tabs? All right. Well, we're going to start with Jared, who was on the Carolina Weather Group this week with live tornado warning coverage. And Jared, we have a follow-up.
Yes, we do. And as it turned out, there was a tornado. So let's check this out, right? I mean, there was a tornado. We had an EF1 in Chapin. It's kind of funny. I was updating the slide, and the last time I used this slide was also another. It was an EF0 in Chapin. So there might be something to this. But
the people of Chapin would like you to use a different slide.
I think just ditch the slide, man. But but there was an EF1 tornado in Chapin on Monday night. It was peak winds of 95 miles an hour, was down on the ground for about 6 miles and change, and was about 200 yards wide, so 2 football fields. It was down for just about 5 minutes, 8:43 to 8:49. And you can see the path there. It lifted just before I-26, which is always good. Here's a look at what the radar kind of looked like and where we kind of thought maybe there might have been a debris signature. And you see there's that little drop there. There's a lot of noise in this, so I think that might be why they didn't go radar confirmed. But there was definitely something in there. You can see the tightening of the rotation on that radar image, and I put spectrum width there because I'm a giant nerd and like to see all the turbulence within each bin, but kind of interesting. So yeah, Chapin did have a tornado. We've been busy, honestly. We've been busy around here. It's been quite a busy few a week plus now at this point.
Yeah.
Stalled fronts, short waves, MCSs. I mean, James and I were running for our lives from a Savannah Bananas game because there was an MCS that was tracking towards Charlotte. That, of course, fell apart and just dropped a few showers on us, but it kept the severe weather train rolling well to the south. So
I left the game early to avoid the MCS. That's how.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was loud, but
Yeah, it was loud.
Tony, you were there, weren't you?
I was there. I got the rare privilege of sitting in the parking lot for 2 hours after that game trying to get out.
See, this is why I also left early.
Yeah. But James also used a scooter, and
I did.
Oh yeah, that was. Anyway, let's not talk about that part. But this was a lot of fun.
I don't know what you're talking about. I love the scooter.
Oh well, I didn't use a scooter. You love the scooter. That's fine.
E-scooter went for the win.
Yeah, but yeah, no, it was it was great before then. A little muggy, but the bananas in Charlotte, that was quite a time. If you haven't been to one of these and you get the opportunity, you win the lottery, do it. It's a lot of fun. That's split with some of the players just dancing. The ump is back there dancing all the time. It's almost like the Naked Gun. If you've ever seen the Naked Gun and Frank Drebin, doing the thing. But it's the weirdest part about all this, though, was seeing Bank of America Stadium set up as a baseball field. That is so strange to me.
I thought you was going to say seeing the Bank of America Stadium full to capacity.
Look, I wasn't going to go there, Scotty. I wasn't going to go there. But what I would say is that David Tepper could only dream of such a thing. And let's hope. Let's hope we can keep. Let's see. I think Bryce is getting better, so I think
let's
we'll be
keep these good vibes going this fall. How about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's Andy Dalton. Actually, there's the
Speaking
Red
of
Rocket.
Panthers.
Yeah, there's the Red Rocket throwing things. So yeah, we Banana Ball is it's phenomenal as long as you're not running from a mesoscale convective complex. There's a lot of people checking the radar.
There were a lot of people checking the radar in our section.
Yeah.
We wanted to
Yeah.
offer up our services.
Yeah.
I kind of felt like they were trying to play a baseball game in the middle of a circus.
That's the goal. That's a feature, not a bug.
Okay, gotcha. We like the baby races the best. Did they do baby races on Friday night?
They did not do baby races. My nephew was one of the babies when they did a game at Boston.
Okay.
And so we've got pictures of him racing towards his dad in front of the Green Monster.
From where we were sitting, we loved the baby races. It was a highlight. And then when I went back and watched the telecast on ESPN2, you could get close-up shots of how terrified the babies were. And I felt really bad all of a sudden.
Yeah.
It's like, I guess it was pretty scary if you were the babies. One of my tabs was the photo of Jared and I love Frank's comment. So let me pop this on the screen here as one of my tabs. So here's Jared and I at the game. And then Frank, I think it was on. Yeah, Frank writes, "It looks like James is sitting on Jared's lap. Y'all too cheap to buy 2 tickets." I couldn't unsee it after that.
No, we couldn't. But it would help if I was about 20 pounds lighter. James, you've got the.
I'm not sitting on your lap one way or the other.
James and his Uncle Jared.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's funny because James is weather uncle and I am weather daddy, even though I don't have kids and James has kids. It's bizarre. It's just the whole thing is weird.
It is. Should I keep going with my tabs now that my screen's up?
Make it so.
All right. I'm going to start with my space-related ones. Just a programming note, if you follow a bunch of mission-oriented NASA accounts, they're all consolidating, so make sure that you follow NASA's solar system. I screenshotted identical messages for Perseverance, Europa, Voyager, Curiosity. Voyager still going, Tony?
Voyager's still
good?
going. This just because the social media is, we'll call it sunsetting. It doesn't mean that the mission is. This is just them consolidating into some more focused social media presences. Nothing to get worried about.
Okay. Tony, I want to ask you for comment on the next one. I had a tweet here I retweeted, but it got deleted by the person who tweeted it. It had nothing to do with a guy who currently owns a company that flies to space. I'll just keep moving on.
Please do.
Please do. How about
Remember
this
to
one?
screenshot next time.
I know. I saw this today. This has nothing to do with weather. A post from somebody at Live 5 News in Charleston, Jared. They write, I'm honestly shocked by results that 4 out of 44 restaurants that were surveyed and had their shrimp genetically tested in the Low Country tested local. Again,
Shrimp-
that meant
shrimp
4
gate.
out of 44 were local, which means 90% of the seafood restaurants have imported shrimp.
Shrimp gates. That's kind of a big deal, honestly. I heard the phrase shrimp fraud for the first time this week, and that's up there. It's up there with rapid unscheduled disassembly. It's a big deal. A lot
So
of
is it
people
like
are.
barbecue big deal? Educate
I
me,
mean,
South Carolina folk.
I mean, on the coast of South Carolina, I mean, we there's a lot of places that pride themselves on their local seafood. Well, as it turns out, local is local to what? The United States? I don't
Today
know.
I learned you can test for that.
Apparently
Right?
so.
I mean, I don't eat a lot of seafood. This reminds me of the last time I went to Savannah. I was like, when in Rome, let me get some seafood. Now, again, this is Charleston we're talking about and not Savannah, but I feel like I'm just relating to that mindset of like, oh, I'm here. I should partake in something local. #scandal.
Yep.
Okay, those are my tabs. Anybody else have tabs?
I have a tab.
I have tabs.
You got tabs on the tabs?
Go ahead, Frank.
I
Go
got
ahead.
tabs.
All right, let's go to Frank's tabs. So many screens. Here we go.
There we go. Okay, first and foremost, going back to Jared's tornado up in Chapin. If you were hit by that tornado and you happen to be missing a trampoline, go check Sandbar Road. There's apparently one 40 feet up in a tree there.
Is there a picture attached to this by chance?
No, I wish there was,
Oh.
but there wasn't. I thought about driving up there. It's only like a 45-minute drive, but I thought about driving up there to get it, but decided, nah, it's probably
For the free
down.
trampoline?
I
Slightly used.
slightly used.
Well
A
traveled.
slightly used Alabama state bird is perched in a tree on Sandbar
Yeah.
Road in
Yeah.
Chapin, South Carolina. Also, apparently, there are unhappy cows in the wake of a tornado up in the upstate somewhere. I couldn't find that one easily enough. Anyway, more tabs. There's the solar cycles again. There's the GFS, the 18C GFS, and there's Andrea down there. If the GFS is to be
I got to
believed.
slide you up. I can't
It's
see.
probably not to be believed, but there it is. The GFS, I think it's something like 114th tropical cyclone of this season that it's generated.
Wait,
and
this
so far we've had
season?
0.
We're only 11 days into the season.
Yes, but it's
GFS
had
is busy.
1, 2, and sometimes 3 on every single run since the 1st of June. Now,
And
on
for
the
anybody
other
not
hand,
keeping
East
score,
Pacific
we've
has
had
been
0.
busy. So there have been 3 over in the East Pacific. So at least there's been something happening there. The close doesn't really count, I guess, but the GFS has that. So let's see, what else do I have? Oh yeah, storm reports. Where'd I put those? There they are. This is from today. Actually, there was some crop damage. I know Chris Jackson, unfortunately, a family member of his, had some corn damaged over in Aiken County from a severe thunderstorm today. My power actually went out. My power did not go out during Helene, but it was out for a couple hours from the storm today. I was not home at the time. Just my smart thermostat said, "Hey, your power's out." There was a ping pong ball sized 1.5 inch hail reported in Berkeley County today.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's 2 other reports in the upstate. I don't know what those are. I mean, not the upstate, the PD, but I don't know what those are. I haven't looked at those. But we had a few severe weather reports in South Carolina, apparently a couple in North Carolina, too.
Frank,
few
that's
others over the rest of the
Frank. That storm in Berkeley County, it struck 2 houses. 2 houses were struck by lightning, and we had another tree get caught on fire. That was quite the thunderstorm for the folks up in the Cane Bay subdivision.
Yeah, despite this just being kind of a more routine summertime diurnal thunderstorm situation we had today, the storms that did pop up were actually fairly robust.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't even have a marginal today, did we? It was just general.
No, I think we did.
Right?
At one point I looked, we had a
did?
marginal.
There was a marginal in eastern North Carolina, but South Carolina was just general thunder.
That's what I thought.
I include Eastern North Carolina when we say we.
Yeah. But it just goes to show that as we're getting into summertime, getting into thunderstorm season. It just goes to show that really any thunderstorm that does pop up in the afternoon on a summer afternoon can be locally severe. Not a whole lot of places will see severe weather, but one or two can just about any day. And I think that's it, except for current radar from the University of Wisconsin showing the storms that we did have today dying off, and next disturbance that will won't really affect us. It's going to pass mostly to our northwest, but back there in Texas and over the lower Mississippi Valley, causing thunderstorms today. And building upper level ridge will mostly deflect that to our north in the coming days, but we're going to see more spotty thunderstorms. Again, kind of a routine summertime setup, but you got to watch out when thunder roars, move indoors.
We had our first 90-degree day here in Charlotte, and has not really backed off since then.
Yep. Okay, I'm done. That's all my
all right,
tabs.
Scotty, you have tabs?
All right, I have tabs. Yeah. Can you see it?
Yeah. What are we looking at?
All right. So this is we had CCMF Carolina Country Music Festival over the weekend here in Myrtle Beach, and we had a pretty nasty line of storms moving off. And if you can see here in the background, a little bit of a funnel cloud there. We thought at one point we might get a little bit of a water spout out there, but it did not fully make contact. But as you can see, they took advice and evacuated the property there. So that was some good news. So that's tab number 1. Let's go to tab number 2.
While we're on that subject, Jared, y'all had a couple of spouts off the Charleston County coast earlier this week, didn't you?
Yep, there were a couple out there. There was a straight line winds yesterday that went through from a thunderstorm thunderstorm complex that came out of Georgia yesterday morning that caused some pretty scary scenes at Wild Dunes.
There was a tornado warning down there too, wasn't there?
There was a tornado warning with it at one point, yes, and it just had straight line winds that you could see a beach umbrella just absolutely flying around. Rob Fowler has a video on his social media. Very scary looking, quite frankly. I was very glad to not be on the beach.
Yeah. Okay, sorry to interrupt, Scotty. Go.
Oh no, you're fine. All right, here's tab number 2. Coastal Carolina heading off to the College World Series. They arrived in Omaha today, so the Shots will be taking on Arizona. And if you remember back in 2016 when the Shots won the College World Series, they beat Arizona. So that's kind of a little omen there. So we're cheering on our Shots, and a lot of folks here from the Myrtle Beach area heading out that way. And then I've got 2 more, and then I'll stop sharing. But I really enjoyed this. As you guys know, I'm a NASCAR fan, and they are going south of the border this week to Mexico City. What? Believe it or not, there's some rain in the forecast at a brand new road course. So this could be interesting.
What are we looking at?
So this is the drivers are being escorted by the Mexican military.
This is an escort.
Yeah, this is an escort. So these drivers, there's 142 haulers that had a military escort through the city or Mexico City, and the drivers driving cars also being escorted through the city. So
I'm going to describe for our audio listeners why I was so puzzled, because this is a photo from inside a vehicle looking out the front windshield, and the pickup truck in front of it has what I think is like armed military guys.
Yes.
Okay.
And so all of the drivers normally drive their motorhomes and all of that. It's a little different this week as they go south of the border. So looking forward to that race. And then finally, this has been my favorite thing to talk about all week long. And I'm sorry if you watched WBTW this week. You've heard me talk a lot.
I watched nothing but WBTW this week.
That's good. Ed, the zebra, finally was captured. So this has been a big story if you've been following along. Actually, when I was in Nashville, that was the talk of the EOC Center, at least that Saturday when Ed first escaped his pen or wherever he was being held. Ed was captured on numerous doorbell cameras and all of that, trotting through neighborhoods on Interstate 24. At one point, some lanes were shut down, and Ed was just all about the Nashville area. And then eventually he got a little helicopter ride back to where he's supposed to be.
He
And
looks so bummed.
he does.
Oh man, all been
But,
captured. That's my Eeyore.
but that is Ed. And so Ed's safe. That's all that matters is Ed is safe. He's back home where he needs to be. So all is well in Ed's world.
Hey,
Fabulous.
speaking of exotic animals, there are 3 states in the United States where it is legal to own a kangaroo without a permit. Who can name one?
A kangaroo or a state?
A kangaroo.
Joey?
A state where you can own a kangaroo.
I believe South Carolina is one.
I think South
Ding,
Carolina
ding,
is
ding.
one. Yes.
Yes.
West
Can you-
Virginia and Wisconsin, but of course it's South Carolina. We learned this on Tiger King back several years
Yes.
ago.
2 of
And we
those
had
3
a-
states are not surprising, but for the purpose of not getting hate mail, I'm not going to disclose which 2.
And we had a kangaroo on the loose here in Horry County about a month ago, just trotting down the road in Aner.
Really?
So, yeah. If you want, listen, here's a little inside info for all those who are watching tonight. If you want to see the most exotic animals, you just travel down to Horry County. We have peacocks, emus, kangaroos. We got a little bit of everything. And all you got to do is go to the little town of Aner there on 501, and you'll see them all there. So, tidbit.
I always thought that was in the parking lot of south of the border. You can see
Well, there too. You could go there too.
You can do people watching there, too.
And
Oh,
we
yeah.
thought Florida man was weird. Apparently, Aner man is what you really have to watch out for.
I don't. I might have to cut the show off here. Oh yes, Jared.
Well, we do have one other thing that we must acknowledge.
Yes, we do.
And the passing of Gary England, he legend in television meteorology. A lot of the things that you know, a lot of the things that are commonplace that we don't even think twice about doing broadcast meteorology, Gary England invented.
Yeah.
That's not an exaggeration. He invented a lot of the technology that you see on air that we just take for granted. Scotty, I know that you and him shared a kinship. Wanted to throw to you and get your thoughts.
Yeah. We've had Gary on the show, and we're going to show some clips here. I met Gary out in Oklahoma City 2015. So he just retired in 2013 and was able to just, like you said, strike up a friendship. And Gary was one of those guys who was just funny as funny can get, but he could turn on the serious just like that when it needed to be serious. And like you said, he really was Oklahoma's weatherman for, I would even still say to today, he's Oklahoma's weatherman. And so many folks turned to Gary during difficult times. He covered the May 3rd, 1999 event, the Moore, Oklahoma event in 2013, as well as the El Reno event. And after that El Reno event, that I think it just kind of got to him. And that's when, he decided it's time to hunkered or to retire, step away. He still did some things with OU and, it's just a legend. And if you ever watch the movie Twister, the first one, he's the weatherman that you see there at the start of the movie. So just a legend. And I remember so many things being said in our podcast that we've done with him a couple of times. And one of them, and I can't remember the exact term he used, but he did radio before he was on TV. And, on radio, you have to capture that attention. And I think he invented the word thunder boomers, which is now, what people are referred to thunderstorms. That was his caption for thunderstorms and describing what they were like. And then, he would just a very unique, just great guy and will definitely be missed. And, when I woke up to the news, Jared, you had shared it in our chat. And then about the time you shared that, Ricky Matthews, a friend of the show, sent me a picture of Gary being on our podcast, and it just kind of went full circle there. But one of the cool things is when he was on our podcast, he wanted me to call him for some reason, make sure everything was set up. And so here I am calling Gary England. And he says, "Best Buy, how can I help you?" It's like just a jokester, and just a good guy. And He'll definitely be missed for sure. And I can't go without saying his famous saying, I'm always, and I think we all will appreciate this. It's Friday night in the big town. We're definitely going to miss hearing Gary say that, because that was his famous saying on Friday nights as he was kicking off his newscast. It's Friday night in the big town, and then he would give the forecast for the weekend. So definitely will miss Gary. Just one of a kind, and yeah, I don't know that we can ever say thank you enough to someone of Gary, because of all, like you said, Jared, of all of what he's done for us all in this industry.
You mentioned his appearance in Twister. He shared that story with us when you guys talked to him in 2015. Here's a clip from that.
Let me tell you a little story about it. When I got out to California to do some stuff for them, what they do is they're in a big studio and they throw the movie up on a wall there, and you get in front of the microphone and you do your thing. And I was a little scared. I watched Bill Paxton do his, and he's a great guy. And then who was it? Helen Hunt did hers, or Jamie Gertz. Jamie Gertz did her little piece, and they throw up the movie there and they voice over that stuff. And they say, okay, and they say to one of them, you need to be out of breath. And he'd drop down and do a bunch of push-ups and jump back up and do the voiceover. And I'm watching all this, really enjoying it. And I'm thinking, God, I'm next. I'm just next. And so earlier that day, to go along with the story, they'd showed me their script. They originally had the script. The tornado was going from Muskogee to northern Oklahoma. All righty? I said, you can't do that. It needs to come from the southwest. All right? They said, they don't care. And so we got it changed. I said, make it come from the southwest. So they revised it. No, I said, what I said to them is use Altus rather than Muskogee. So they had the tornado go from northern Oklahoma to Altus was what they had written in the thing. And finally I said, that's just not the way it works. People will know that that's not right. But when I got out there, they asked me, Jan de Bont, the main director, I guess it was, he said, help us make this thing real. He said, so I have to rewrite the script, quite a bit of stuff there.
And you guys also mentioned, as you were remembering, Gary, his influence on what we do today, both as broadcast meteorologists and everyone at home who looks at a radar on their phone. He was instrumental at developing radar, a military technology for the use of meteorology. Here he is describing that story.
Following the research down at Norman, and a friend of mine called, said he worked down there, still works down there, said, you got to come look at this. So we looked at that big Doppler radar they brought in, that dew-line radar, the antenna was about 30-some feet across, and it was designed to pick up missiles and enemy aircraft. And so the guys down at Norman, guys and gals, were converting it to use for warnings. So it looked like to me from the results of their research after a few years that Doppler was the deal. So I talked the owner of the station, Mr. Griffin, into putting up, I think it was $250,000. In those days, that was a ton, man. So just based on my excitement and my belief, he put that money up. I figured I'd lose my career over the deal. And when we got it, I was sure I was going to lose my career. Like 2.5 years later, we ordered it in 78, got it in 81, and it looked like scrambled eggs, man, because, there were no nice computers tied to it to unfold the velocities. And the fold velocity was 32 miles an hour. And I remember looking at that and thinking, my career's over. This guy spent $250,000, and it looks like we bought a bunch of scrambled eggs. But they quickly came out with FFT, fast Fourier transform processor, and that was just pattern recognition and converted to another type of Doppler. All this time, just interesting things were happening, new cameras, better chase teams. And so it's been an incredible 40 years.
Just watching that clip again, Scotty, the look of delight on your face as you were sitting there on Google Hangouts with Gary England.
All of us have those people you look up to, and Gary was one for me, and I'm sure for a lot of folks who are in the weather industry, no matter on broadcast or National Weather Service, non-traditional meteorologists, and just hearing it. So I mean, I could sit there in 8 hours and just never get bored and just listen to the stuff that he talked about, and just to know that he's experienced it all. And I hate we didn't get into all of those, but I encourage you to go back to watch that entire episode because he does get into the major tornado outbreaks and what it was like covering that, knowing that people most likely were going to lose homes and everything that they own with those massive tornadoes that moved through El Reno and more, and it really shook him up there towards the end of his career. And just what a meteorologist out there faces. We've had Damon Lane on before and talking about, covering tornadoes and then one hit in your neighborhood and your house. And it's just, just the stories that they have out there. And Gary definitely has a lot of stories. And so I encourage you to go back and listen to that podcast. I think our folks would really enjoy that.
We've got a QR code on the screen right now. We put the links in the comment and in the description. And if you're listening on our audio podcast feed, this episode is so old, I don't think it's actually even available if you were to scroll all the way back to 2015 on our audio podcast feed, which is to say we're going to drop it again. So you'll see high up on your subscription list an episode drop. It'll be our 2015 audio only conversation with Gary England. So what a life, what a legacy, what an influence, a lasting influence he had on what we do today and what we will be doing going forward. And our thoughts with his friends, his family, his coworkers, and everyone out there in Oklahoma City. I'm sure many viewers felt and feel like they lost a member of their family.
And one other thing is Oklahoma City is a very dynamic TV market.
Mm-hmm.
To say the least. But when you have meteorologists from other stations who were on TV the same time Gary was, talking about how fantastic he was and about what he's done for the community, that speaks a lot. And so it definitely has affected a lot of folks in the weather community with the loss of Gary today.
Yes, you mentioned Damon Lane, and he posted, like you, a picture of himself with Gary on Facebook today, and there it is. Competitors and friends all at the same time.
Yeah. Michael Armstrong also, if you watch on or if you follow on social media, Michael Armstrong has a great post. Michael was working shoulder to shoulder with Gary during the two big tornado events in 2013, and Michael's got some powerful stories about those nights. And so I encourage you to look up his post too, because it'll really show you who Gary is.
Yeah, you can find those there on Facebook and the like. So we will leave it there. Hope you guys get a chance to check out that conversation we had with Gary. Some great stories, some great insights from our Carolina Weather Group Deep Vault archive. So Tony, thank you again for your time and for all of your insights, and we look forward to talking to you more about space weather as we continue through this arc of active solar time. Frank, Jared, Scotty, I'm James Brierton in Charlotte. We will talk to you again real soon. If we get any more pop-up storms, don't forget, you can always check out real-time warnings and alerts over on the Carolina Weather Net, streaming on our YouTube channel, anywhere you watch YouTube. Have a good night.